Hey there, bookworms, and welcome back to the Book Nook podcast. You know how this works. We pick a book that a listener suggested, crack it open, and share all the best parts, the insights, the big takeaways, the stuff that makes you think, wait a minute, this changes everything.
Like we're giving you that all-access backstage pass to the world of ideas.
Exactly. And for today's deep dive, we're going way back to 1921, Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. A listener wrote in and told us that this book changed their whole perspective on reaching their goals. And you won't believe this, getting rid of fear along the way. And I have to say, I'm intrigued.
This book is so cool because it brings together philosophy and personal experience. Behrend was a student of Thomas Troward, a major figure in the New Thought movement. So we're talking about some really powerful ideas.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those big ideas.
Yeah.
Behrend starts with visualization, which I think we all do to some degree.
Right.
Right, like when you picture yourself giving an amazing presentation or finally taking that vacation you've always dreamed of.
Absolutely. We're always creating mental images, even if we don't realize it. But Behrend takes it a step further. She says that visualization isn't just daydreaming. It's a powerful tool for shaping the world around us.
Now that's got my attention. How does
Oh.
that work? Does just thinking about something make it happen?
To explain this, Behrend uses a really cool analogy, a magic lantern. Now think of your desire, like the slide. Your willpower is the light, and the world is the screen. So when you focus your will on your desire, it's like shining a bright light through the slide, and you project that image out into the world.
So it's not enough to just picture something. You have to really focus your intention and energy on making it real. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. It's about making your thoughts and actions match what you want to achieve.
This almost sounds a little too good to be true. What about when things don't go our way? Does that mean we didn't visualize hard enough?
Well, that's where Behrend's idea of being a center of divine operation comes in. Now, I know that might sound a little well out there.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but go on. I'm listening.
Basically, what Behrend is saying is that we're not just separate individuals, but we're all connected to this universal source of power and intelligence. She describes it kind of like branches on a tree, with each one getting its energy from the same trunk.
So it's like we're all connected to this incredible network, this universal mind, and we can tap into that energy.
Exactly. And when we understand that connection, we can start to use that power to create the reality that we want.
Oh, that's a powerful idea. And speaking of powerful ideas, Behrend tells a story about this young woman who desperately wanted a piano to practice on.
Right.
She visualized it in her home so clearly that one day someone just gave her a piano.
It's a perfect example of the power of focused intention and belief. Behrend argues that our thoughts really can shape the world around us.
I don't know about you, but this book is already giving you a lot to think about. And if you're feeling the same way, listener, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. It helps other people find the Book Nook and join in on these amazing conversations.
We really appreciate that. Now let's get back to Behrend. She really dives into this concept of the creative power of thought, explaining that everything we create starts with a thought that I am consciousness, which then leads to desire and eventually to the mental pictures we create through visualization.
So it's not just about wishing for things. It's about consciously directing our thoughts and energy toward what we want to create.
Precisely. And Behrend really stresses how important it is to protect that vision, keeping those desires close to your heart, not necessarily sharing them with everyone.
Interesting. It's almost like you don't want to weaken the energy by sharing it too soon.
Exactly. You want to keep that creative power focused and strong. Now, when it comes to personal journeys, Behrend's own path to discovering these ideas is pretty fascinating.
Okay, I love a good origin story. Tell me more.
Well, Behrend wasn't always this confident manifester. She actually went through a really lonely period in her life and was searching for inner peace. She tried all sorts of things, but nothing seemed to work.
So even someone who becomes an expert in these ideas has to start somewhere.
Right.
Everyone's a beginner at some point.
Absolutely. And that's really encouraging. It shows that anyone can awaken to these truths within themselves.
So what was Behrend's turning point? What led her to these incredible insights?
It all started when she came across a book called Edinburgh Lectures on Mental Science by guess who, Thomas Troward. One particular paragraph about the mind being a center of divine operation totally captivated her. It became a guiding principle for her. Yeah, it's amazing how much one little paragraph, one idea, can change a person's whole life.
For sure. It makes you realize how powerful words and ideas can be. So did reading Troward's book turn Behrend into a mental science expert right away? Or is there more to the story?
Well, she was definitely hooked. Behrend felt this urge to learn more from Troward directly. She wanted to be a student, but it wasn't easy at all. Her first attempts to reach out to him were met with silence. No replies to her letters, nothing.
Oh, wow. I can imagine how discouraging that must have been. That sounds like a real test of her commitment to these ideas.
It definitely was. But Behrend wouldn't give up. She just knew in her heart that she was meant to study with Troward, so she kept looking for a way to connect with him.
That's some serious dedication.
Yeah,
So how did she finally break through? Did Troward eventually come around?
he did, but it involved a pretty unusual challenge. Troward finally responded, but instead of accepting her as a student, he gave her a test question. He told her to look at a specific verse in the Book of Revelation and explain what it meant.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. A test question from the Book of Revelation. That's not your typical application process. So how did Behrend handle this curveball?
Well, she was determined to find the answer. And this is where her story takes a really interesting turn. Behrend ended up talking to a Parisian astrologer, even though she wasn't really into astrology.
Hold on. An astrologer? That doesn't sound very mental sciencey.
I know, right? It seems like a strange detour. But sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the greatest insights. And in this case, it was the astrologer who actually helped Behrend crack the code. And it was all thanks to his cat.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about this cat and the astrologer. What was the big revelation?
Well, Behrend went to see this astrologer for horoscope reading, just out of curiosity, really. But while she was there, the astrologer's cat jumped up on the table and seemed really interested in the verse from Revelation that Behrend was struggling with.
Okay, a cat who's into biblical interpretation.
Yeah,
This just keeps getting better.
right. It's like something out of a movie.
Right.
So the astrologer sees his cat acting this way and gets curious himself. He takes a look at the verse, and then it's like a light bulb goes off. He tells Behrend that the city mentioned in the verse represents truth. And he emphasizes that truth is non-invertible. No matter which way you look at it, it's always the same.
Ah, I see. It's about how truth never changes, how it's always consistent. No matter what angle you approach it from, truth is truth.
Exactly. And that was the key that unlocked everything for Behrend. She sent her interpretation to Troward, and he was obviously impressed. He wrote back explaining the main principles of his teachings. He really stressed faith, prayer, and the Bible as the foundation for understanding mental science.
So it wasn't about some kind of secret rituals or weird practices like you might imagine with this kind of mentor-student relationship.
Not at all. Troward based his teachings on traditional spiritual principles, but he looked at them through the lens of mental science. He even warned Behrend against studying the occult. He thought it would distract her from the real path.
That's really interesting. It shows that we can find deep insights in teachings we might already know if we're willing to see them from a fresh perspective. Now, before we get too far into Behrend's journey, I just want to remind our listeners that if you're liking this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps other curious people like you find their way to the Book Nook.
We appreciate your support. So where were we? Ah, yes, Behrend's transformation under Troward's guidance.
It sounds like she was really starting to understand the power of her mind. Did she only focus on interpreting scriptures with Troward, or did they explore other techniques?
One of the most important things they focused on was the power of spoken words. Behrend explains how every word we say carries the seed of creative power that can actually shape our reality.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, but about actually choosing the words we speak, knowing that they have a real impact.
That's it. She uses the example of wanting to have more joy in your life. If you say the word joy over and over again with feeling, you're planting that seed in your mind and letting it grow.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like the idea behind affirmations, which are so popular these days. But what about when we have trouble believing our own words? What if we're full of doubt? How can we strengthen our faith when it feels weak?
That's a great question, and Behrend answers it directly. She tells us that everyone has faith in something, even if we don't realize it or if it's not always positive. She wants us to think back to times when we were successful, those moments when we achieved something we really wanted.
So it's about tapping into that feeling of accomplishment, remembering that we've already proven we can do it. We've got a history of success, even if we don't always see it.
You got it. Those past experiences show us what we're capable of. And when we remember those wins, it helps us believe that we can achieve our goals in the future.
That's a really helpful way to think about it. It's not about blind faith, but about recognizing the power we already have.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging our potential and trusting ourselves to create positive change.
Now, Behrend also talks a lot about taking action. She mentions faith with works, reminding us that action is key to making our desires a reality. It's not enough to just sit around and visualize. We have to actually do something to reach our goals.
She gives this great example of an Australian millionaire who had this big dream of turning a barren desert into a beautiful green landscape. And he didn't just dream about it. He took action, investing his time, energy, and money to make it happen. And you know what? It worked.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
It really shows that we have the power to shape our own lives. We're not just puppets of fate. Our actions can turn our dreams into reality. It's
Yeah.
a pretty powerful example.
Right. It really shows what can happen when we align our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions. Totally. It's about trusting your gut and then putting in the work to back it up.
So Behrend also explores this idea of scientific prayer, which sounds a little contradictory. How can prayer be scientific?
Well, it's not about the traditional way we think of prayer, kneeling down and pleading with some higher power. Behrend's approach is more about understanding the principles behind mental science and using that knowledge to align ourselves with the creative forces in the universe. It's about working with those forces, not trying to overpower them.
So it's less about begging and more about consciously working with the universe.
Exactly. And a really important part of scientific prayer is believing that you've already received what you want.
Wait a minute. How can we believe we already have something if it hasn't actually shown up in our physical reality yet?
That's where the whole idea of the creative power of thought comes in. Remember, everything starts with the thought. The thought is like the seed, and what shows up in the physical world is the fruit. So when we hold the thought of our desire as if it's already happened, we're basically planting that seed and letting it grow.
So we have to shift our mindset from one of lack and wanting to one of abundance and having it already. We're not chasing after something, we're already holding it in our minds and hearts.
Precisely. It's about having that unwavering belief, that deep down knowing that what we want is already ours, even if we can't see it or touch it yet.
That really makes sense. It's about changing our inner world to match the outer world we want to create.
Right. Behrend even gives some specific suggestions for prayer and affirmation. She emphasizes how important it is to make sure our thoughts and feelings line up with what we want to achieve. It's not about saying words without meaning, but truly feeling as if we've already received what we're asking for.
It's almost like acting as if our desire has already come true.
And that as-if attitude is incredibly powerful. But Behrend is also careful to say that this isn't about trying to manipulate or control other people. It's about working with universal principles for everyone's benefit.
Which is a crucial distinction. It's about aligning ourselves with the good creative forces of the universe, not trying to force our own selfish desires on others.
Absolutely. And remember, this is a practice just like anything else. Learning to master the power of thought takes time, effort, and consistency.
It's not a magic trick or a quick fix. It's about developing a new way of thinking, a new way of being in the world.
And that's what makes Your Invisible Power such a powerful book. It gives us a roadmap for personal growth, encouraging us to reach our full potential and embrace the power within.
Well, listeners, we've come to the end of our deep dive into Your Invisible Power. That was quite a journey.
This book is filled with so many incredible insights and practical tips that can really change your life. It reminds us that we're not just victims of circumstance, but creators of our own reality. We have the power to shape our lives, achieve our dreams, and experience a level of joy and fulfillment we might never have thought possible.
If you're ready to tap into your own invisible power, I highly recommend checking out Behrend's book. You can find a link to buy it in the episode description. Don't forget to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast for more deep dives into amazing life-changing books. Thanks for listening.
And we hope you'll join us again soon for another exciting exploration of a book suggested by one of you. Until then, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.
Thanks for listening to the Book Nook podcast. Make sure to check out the link in the description to get your copy of the book.